Hi guys, this is MaximumDonut. Welcome to another episode of Dark Souls PvP in depth. Today I'll be talking about dexterity builds and dexterity weapons and how to assign points into dexterity classes to make sure that there's not so much wastage of soul levels and things like that. This is my soul level 100 dexterity build, which I'm using to duel in the arena and things, and it's actually quite an effective class. It's a class I would highly recommend to any beginning player. It's got 39 points into vitality, 14 into attunement, 14 into endurance, 20 into strength, and 40 into dex. The gold hemmed black cloak, black hood is just something that I use mainly for appearances, just because I think it looks kind of cool, but it's actually not the most ideal thing to be using in PvP. But anyway, this armor setup gives you about 29 poise, but you can modify it to give you 31 poise just by equipping the Gauntlet of Thorns. And the Gauntlet of Thorns, as I've mentioned in previous videos, is actually a very effective PvP tool, something that you guys should strongly consider including as part of your armor setup. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, well, if you're putting points into dexterity and strength, you're going to be thinking about why you're putting those points into those particular areas, and that is based on what weapon you want to be using. So the dexterity weapons of note are katanas, curved swords, and straight swords. There are a whole bunch of others which I'll talk about in depth a little bit more, but just for the purposes of your information to start off with, those are the weapons that a lot of dexterity builds use. So in terms of dexterity, you want to be putting about 40 points into dexterity, and that's because that's the point at which if you go above, then you're getting diminishing returns. So say, for example, if you put 41 points in dexterity, you're not getting nearly as much bang for your buck. You're not getting as much damage increase by putting that extra point into dexterity. There's some builds you'll see around with 45 dexterity, and that's because up to that point, you'll be getting increased, or you get faster casting time. So you'll get to cast Great Combustion faster or Fire Tempest faster, but above 45 you don't actually get any increase in casting time. So that's why you'll see that breakpoint around. But for my purposes, for a lot of people's purposes, 40 dexterity is enough for good damage scaling with dexterity weapons. Alright, so now in terms of the strength breakpoints. So I'm going to go through a lot of different weapons here, and the strength breakpoints for all of them. Essentially, it's rapiers, which the strength breakpoint is about 7 to 10. Curved swords is around 9. Straight swords is around 8 to 10. Greatswords, or the ones that are usable for dexterity classes, are generally around 16, except for the obsidian greatsword, which is at 20. And katanas, which in general are around 14, at least for the iaito and the uchigatana. There are a few dexterity weapons of special note. My particular favorites are lifehunt scythe and the chaos blade, which have strength breakpoints of 16. So these are the strength requirements that you'll need to use these weapons one-handed. If you want to go to use these weapons two-handed, you can use about 33% less strength, because if you two-hand something, you'll need your strength increases by about 50% effectively. So having said all that, what would I recommend as a good strength breakpoint for dexterity builds? So at 10 strength, you can use the boulder side sword, which is, I think, one of the best dexterity weapons, I guess. Pretty much every rapier, as well as curved swords and two-hand katanas as well, the uchigatana and the iaito. You can't two-hand the chaos blade or the washing pole. So, I mean, that's a pretty good breakpoint for, those of you who really want to strip dexterity build down to its very bare bones. I mean, that's the build you should go for. You should go for 10 strength. If you want to go a little bit higher, if you go to 14 strength, you can utilize all katanas one-handed, pretty much all rapiers and curved swords and straight swords of note as well. But you can't one-hand the chaos blade or the washing pole. But you can still two-hand the chaos blade, but not the washing pole. Okay, and at 16 strength, that's the breakpoint that I would recommend to most dexterity users. You can use the lifehunt scythe and the chaos blade one-handed. You can also use the halberd or most of the halberds actually. You can use the lucerne if you want to, or the great scythe, the regular scythe. You can utilize the silver knight spear. and as well as obviously you can utilize the bolter's side sword, rapiers, curved swords, katanas, all of that. Alright, so if you want to have a very versatile build, one that can use lots of different dexterity weapons, then I would recommend going for 16. However, you can take it up to 20 like I have in this character to utilize things like the obsidian greatsword or the washing pole. I mean, the whole reason that I've gone for 20 instead of 16 is just for a little bit of added variety, but you can just put those 4 extra points into vitality and you'll probably be just as well off in terms of utilizing a lot of different types of weapons. And also, don't forget that you can also use these weapons two-handed, things like the washing pole or the obsidian greatsword if you just stick to the 16 strength breakpoint. Alright, so that's strength breakpoints for dexterity builds sorted. I just want to briefly mention vitality and endurance. I mean, these are things that most people would probably know about. This guy's Darkwind Blade on a falchion trying to stun lock, also got the Hornet Ring going for backstabs, and you'll see in a second here, he also spams Dark Magic. This guy is, yes. Anyway, so vitality wise, you go for 40 vitality is around about where you'd want to be sort of beefy enough that you can survive, but if you go down to 30 vitality, I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing either. And at around 40 endurance is where you'll start getting... Okay, so 40 endurance is the first breakpoint for endurance. You can go a lot less, but at 40 endurance, that's when, if you go above that, then you won't get any extra stamina. So that's not necessarily worthwhile going for unless you have a very high weight requirement build. So if you've thought about what armors you want to use and you want to really go for like some heavier armors or some heavier equipment while still fast rolling without using Havels or whatever, then you probably will need to go above 40 endurance. Anyway, for my purposes, I usually go for 40 endurance on all of my builds. Vitality wise, around 40 to 50 is enough to get, you know, to be quite beefy. If you add the Ring of Favor and Protection in, you'll be a powerhouse in terms of like health wise. So I mean, those are the vitality and endurance breakpoints. I mean, there's not really that much to say there. So yes. Next, I wanted to talk about the attunement, or yes, the attunement breakpoints. So this is only really relevant if you wanted to go for a pyromancer character with your dexterity build. Because I'm not talking about dexterity intelligence or dexterity faith hybrids. It's not really that relevant for those particular character builds. So essentially the only thing it's useful for, I mean, you know, in terms of this video, is pyromancers. So what pyromancies do you want to use and how much of them do you want to use? Well, essentially if you're invading, you'll never need more than 1 stack of Great Combustion or Black Flame. If you want to go for both, I mean, that's 16 casts, which you should really never need more than. If you're casting 16 of them in every fight, then you're using it too much. Or if you are not invading and you're hosting and you want to have a lot of stacks, I mean, you know, I suppose you could opt for that, but still, again, you really shouldn't be using more than, say, 2 or 3 in every round. In my opinion anyway, because I like to sort of switch things up and, you know, destroy, or well, break down the monotony of the fight. I mean, you know, you guys have seen some Great Combust spammers in this video. They're very easy to deal with because their attacks become very predictable. It's like, you know, they have a weapon with just 1 attack type, and that's all they're throwing over and over again. And so it becomes very easy to read them, it becomes very easy to, you know, attack accordingly, basically. So I would say don't use so many. Alright, so attunement wise, you'll need 1 attunement slot for Great Combust. I think it's a useful utility for all pyromancer builds. And then you have to decide whether or not you want to use 1 more attunement slot for a great fireball or for a fire tempest, or if you want to dole out another 2 attunement slots to use chaos attacks, such as the Great Chaos Fireball or Chaos Firestorm, which do more damage, and they also have that residual lava effect, which can be useful. It's really up to you which one you want to go for. At the very most, I would say that you only need 4 attunement slots, but for most of my builds, all I go for is 3. So 14 points into attunement generally for me is enough for most of my dexterity builds. So now that I finished talking about the dexterity stats that you'd want for a dexterity scaled dexterity damage scaled build, I just wanted to show off a few armor setups. So this is just a combination of maidens with Go's armor, Go's gauntlets, and the Elite Knight leggings. You can switch out the Go's gauntlets to the Lord's blade gloves to have a little bit more of an appropriate poise breakpoint, and also you can equip like a better shield or a utility weapon. And I also use the lifehunt scythe as well. You guys have seen a few matches that I played with this setup just before, and this is my other build that I use very commonly in PvP. It's a really effective build. It uses the Leo ring as one of the rings, as well as the ring of favor and protection. It uses the dark hand because it's very light offhand shield, as well as the gold hemmed black cloak, armor of Artorias, the Go's gauntlets, and the Hollow Soldier waistcloth. But you can use any other ring. Basically, you can use a wolf ring for extra poise. You can up to 74 poise, or red tearstone ring, or the chloranthy ring. I mean, there are a bunch of other rings that you can use that are just as effective. You can even use Havel's ring and equip some extra gear if you want to, but I think this build actually looks quite cool. And I hit 34 poise just because, I mean, it's above 31 poise, but I don't believe that it's enough to withstand a one-handed greatsword swing. But I mean, I don't really care too much about that breakpoint, so I don't really bother about that poise breakpoint generally when I build my armor setups. So those are just two armor setups that can be used as dexterity armor setups. I think they're just ones that I think look cool, and they're fairly effective and meet sort of reasonable poise requirements. But anyway, I mean, that's just up to you guys. You can take it or leave it. I can show off some more like armor setups that I tend to favor, but mostly, I mean, you guys want to reach certain breakpoints. I might talk like about some poise breakpoints at sometime later in some other episode, but anyway, for now, I'm just gonna leave it at that. And I'm going to start talking a little bit about the Boulder Side Sword and the Leo Ring. I mean, this is my Leo Ring build, and I'm just going to talk briefly about how I use it effectively. The things that I've learned about the Leo Ring and the Boulder Side Sword from my use of it, and you know, these are just going to be a little bit of extra pointers, just, you know, to add on to the end of my discussion about, you know, breakpoints and scaling, and how to effectively build a dexterity character from the bottom up, basically. So the Boulder Side Sword is a very commonly used weapon. It's used by a lot of very good PvPers, like Big Tata, yes, that's it. And along with the Leo Ring, it is a very powerful attack combination. I actually, whilst using this build, so long as I have enough poise, I'm just not afraid to trade shots. I mean, even with people who are using Dark Moon Blade buff strength weapons, I mean, you can pretty much hit trade with them if you manage to get counterattacks off properly and don't get stun locked to death. For things like falchions and Dark Moon Blade buff falchions or curved swords, you're in a bit more trouble in that department, because like, they will actually stun lock you to death, and you won't be able to hit trade for very long without having to toggle swap out away from it. But anyway, get parried there. Unfortunately, he doesn't get the riposte off, which is a shame for him. So the Boulder Side Sword moveset, I'm sure you guys have seen it before. So the R1 attacks, both one-handed and two-handed, are just sweeps, just like regular swings, and the R2 attack, both one and two-handed, is this just like very long range thrust, like you saw right there. And you just saw 700 damage come off from just an R2 attack, and that's because the Leo Ring counter damage is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there's no way that this guy will be able to justify doing hit trades like that, because he'll die in about 2 hits. So makes it a force to be reckoned with, that R2 attack. So you know, just doing some stupid stuff, stupid untargeted stuff here. But anyway, so yeah, the R1 attack, just a regular swing. The after rolling attack for the one and two-handed Boulder Side Sword is just a quick thrust, and that can also actually be very powerful. That, I believe, also counts to your bonus counter damage if you are using the Leo Ring. So if you can manage to time that as a counter as well, I mean, that can be very effective, very deadly. You know, I mean, it's difficult for enemies to like predict like that's what you're going to do. I mean, if you're just rolling around a bit, you know, that attack, it can be very difficult to predict when that attack is going to come off. my recommendation to anyone who wants to use the Boulder Side Sword in PvP is don't rely on one attack. So if you're going to be using the R2 attack, which is by far and away the best attack that the Boulder Side Sword has in its arsenal, then use it. I mean, like, use it a lot. You can use it however much you like, but don't rely on it. If you see an opportunity where you be able to maybe hit them without them hitting you, you know, if you can just like outrange them and stuff, then yeah, by all means go for it. But if they know what you're going to throw, they know when you're going to throw it, then, well, it's going to start getting predictable. I mean, it's going to start getting easier for them to parry you. Not to mention the fact that if they know when you're going to throw your attack, then it leaves you vulnerable for things like jumping attacks or for getting roll BS or whatever. So my recommendation to you is to keep them guessing. You know, roll around, keep mobile, throw after rolling attacks, throw the R2 every once in a while as well, because now with stun locking being so much easier, you can actually poise break them. So if they're fishing, then just go for an R1 spam, you know, just go for it over and over again and maybe try and poise break them and then just roll away. And that's a perfectly legitimate option for people who are just trying to backstab fish you or just trying to constantly circle around you to get the BS. So those are just some brief pointers on how to use the Boulder Side Sword moveset effectively. The next thing I wanted to just briefly mention is how to use the Leo Ring effectively. So the Leo Ring is a ring that increases your counter damage. So that's damage that's dealt to your enemy while they are in their attack animation or just after their attack animation has finished. So with the lag, I believe that that's mainly just when they're actually doing their attack animation. Now, you find it very difficult to hit them just after their attack animation unless they're using things like strength weapons, I suppose. You know, those are situations where it's actually a lot easier to get counters off. But anyway, so it only applies with thrusting type weapons. So if it has a thrusting attack in its move set, you can just check the item description if it's a partially thrusting weapon, or if it's mainly a slashing weapon, or I don't know what other type of weapon there is. I'm sure there is another type, but anyway, just check if it's a thrusting weapon to see if it's actually can be used. I mean, there are some weapons out there that you wouldn't think benefits from the Leo Ring, but things like the pickaxe and the lucerne for one reason or another. I mean, the lucerne I can kind of understand, but the pickaxe doesn't really seem like a thrusting weapon per se, but regardless. So I find that the best benefit that you get from the Leo Ring is by using weapons like the Boulder Side Sword or the halberd. I mean, if you manage to do it with the greatsword, then, you know, power to you, man, because I tried that for a while and it sucked. You can also try using the Leo Ring with things like spears and rapiers as well, but because they are like quite low damage output weapons, it's not as effective. I don't find the damage bonus is really worth it. There was an example of actually a reasonable hit trade. So I did 600 damage to him, and he did what? Maybe he did around 500 or 600 damage, but the only problem there being that I got poise broken and he did not. So you know, if he had thrown a second attack there was a slight chance that I wouldn't have been able to roll away from it, but I think I probably would have been able to. This is an example. This guy, he uses a Darkwind Blade on a Man-Serpent Greatsword. This is an amazing example of how this guy, like, he is very, very good at stun locking, I think. Yeah, the way that those attacks actually come off, it's very difficult to actually get away from them. So that first attack poise breaks, then the second attack sort of continues it, and then that third attack, I actually was able to roll away, but it caught me as I was rolling away and killed me. Yeah, so if I had enough health to tank 3 of those shots, then I would have been fine, but otherwise it's quite a interesting sort of combo that he's got going there. There I ate one shot, and yeah, unfortunately he didn't manage to get that stun locking combo off again. That's one thing I actually should probably work on doing, is trying to utilize the medium roll, sorry, and use a bit heavier weapons. But I think I'll do that at some point. You see, this guy is very smart, and unfortunately I timed my roll away pretty poorly there. So that was an example of how not to choose hit trades effectively. Yeah. With the Leo ring, it's very good to go for hit trades. And what I mean by hit trades, of course, is you attack and take damage. You tank damage. You just accept the fact that you can take damage and try and dole out as much damage to them as possible. Hopefully with a R2 attack, and use the Leo ring as to get counter damage off. But you have to choose when you're going to do hit trades effectively. I mean, you have to be strategic about them. You can't just throw them out willy-nilly. Alright, so the video is coming to a close here. I mean, normally I don't ask for like support for my videos, but I do want to know if this is actually something that is going to, I know people are actually interested in seeing, because I know for a fact that a lot of my viewers are fairly experienced PvPers. So if you guys, if there are any of my viewers out there who are interested in seeing more tutorial videos, or who have suggestions for me about what they'd like to see in a tutorial videos such as this, or maybe comments or advice on how to improve this series, that would be really greatly appreciated by me. So please, I welcome feedback, and otherwise I hope you guys enjoyed this next Dark Souls PvP in-depth episode, and I will see you guys next time.